first gentleman to talk, and I use that term very loosely because I've known him way too long, is Mr. Barry Hughes. Big hand for Barry.
How do we move forward as an industry? By learning from the adversities that have impacted our businesses and our livelihoods in the past. What is the human cost of a single decision that changed an industry and a wider regional community without consideration of the economic and psychological ramifications? Good morning, everybody. My name's Barry Hughes. I'm the chair of the Gulf Cattlemen's Association. And I'm here this morning to give you a brief overview of the current position that the northern beef industry finds itself in. I'd just like to take a quick opportunity to thank the organisers to be here today. And I'd like you to keep those first two questions in mind when it comes time for the Q&A session. Issues of concern for the northern beef industry. They are wide, they are varied, and they are very pertinent right now in the way that our industry is trying to deal with the situation. Continuity of cash flow and diminishing equity levels within the cattle enterprises in the northern beef industry is a huge issue. Having just had meetings in Croydon on Friday, Georgetown on Sunday, the issues that are emanating from the floor, and I might say coming from a wider network in regard to the ability of our industry to have the production levels to meet the financial commitments that our industry is facing. Climatic conditions that have impacted the region that we represent is another huge concern. The fires, the floods of 2010, the fires of 2012 and 3 years of drought are really starting to take their toll on the energy levels that are left in our industry. And I guess that leads into issues of concern surrounding things like the psychological well-being and the pressures that are coming with dealing with that issue. The succession planning issues is another component of our industry right now that is being asked some very hard questions. We are seeing succession planning take it, not being able to deliver, and we all know that they are living documents, but right now we're starting to see the effect of that, where younger families are leaving not only our industry but our communities to be able to sustain the family life that they require in terms of education and having the benefits that their children need to become better citizens, etc., as they grow up. So succession planning is a major concern for our industry right now. And I guess the other one is maintaining a herd nucleus to rebuild a viable cattle enterprise once we transition out of where we find ourselves today. The level of debt within our own businesses and across the industry as a whole is also another major issue. And we're starting to come to the realisation is if we don't think outside the circle, if we don't embrace things that we've never exposed ourselves before in regard to understanding finance and applying better information dissemination in regard to understanding that finance, our industry is going to find it very tough without that form of assistance being there. I know Andrew's going to touch on some of that in his presentation. I guess as an industry we need to be looking at ways and means of finding the solutions to move our industry forward as part of that exercise. The Gulf Cattlemen's Association last year, through their debt survey, identified a 28% fall in land values. At the same time, we've seen a 22% rise in borrowings. This was following on immediately after the live export ban, and it comes down to the way that the banks changed the way they did business by shifting goalposts in regard to existing loans and foreshadowed borrowings to accommodate what was going on in the industry at that period of time. The reverberations of that are still very strong as they emanate across the industry, even as we speak here today. The inability from our industry to manage the three key principles of management strategies, and they revolve around land, livestock and financial management. We are seeing pressures being applied because of the drought situation in terms of getting stocking rates matching carrying capacities, to take into consideration the health of our soils and how we look after the little bit of pastures that we've got. And I might say at this point in time the grasshoppers are doing a pretty fair demolition job on those people who are lucky enough to get under a little bit of consistent rainfall to get some pasture growth happening. And I guess the three key issues that follow on from that is production, turnover and cash flow. So there's a lack of confidence across our industry right now. But in saying that, our industry is not going away. It has to rebuild, and it has to rebuild in a more resilient way. It has to be very clear about the direction it needs to go in. It has to be ready to take up the fight where there could be threats, and no doubt there will be more threats coming our way. And I don't believe our industry is in a very good position right now to be able to handle too many more threats coming our way in regard to the psychological issues that our landholders are facing, and also the financial pressures. Pencils need to be sharpened across a number of areas, and those areas include agri-political representation. Pencils need to be sharpened in regard to the promotion and marketing of the product that we produce. We also need a far greater understanding of financial management and the ramifications of being in a position where we don't or are not in control of the decisions that we make based on good land and livestock management principles. Most of the decisions we find that raising enterprises are making today are based on financial pressures, and that is creating a whole new set of issues in terms of what kind of condition our industry is going to be as we transition. As industry representative bodies, we need to be working more collaboratively with regional bodies. And the word collaboration came up this morning. It came up at Georgetown and came up at Croydon. It's nothing new. I think it's just in times of adversity we seem to be brought together, and we find ourselves in that position right now. So collaboration is a key to some of the finding some of the pathways out of where we are, and NRM groups play a vital role in this. And I think as the day progresses, NRM groups, we've already seen them in the spotlight this morning. I think they've got a far greater role to play in terms of leadership, in making sure that we get the right processes in place to give people the options to work with. Local government, we had this discussion in Croydon as well, and the Mayor from Etheridge was there. We're finding that local government networks are a powerful tool that we probably haven't taken advantage of in regards to being able to use the resources and the networks that are within the local government network. And that probably applies also to the state and federal departments that we work with on a regular basis. So other organisations within the agricultural sector, and I'm talking, the agricultural development that's going on around Georgetown on a local level. I'm talking fisheries that are based out of Normanton and Corumba I guess more on a regional level. and that collaboration is an integral part with other ag sectors in regard to dealing with some of the issues that we're facing. All these issues are important, as the northern beef industry cannot afford any more hits, as I said, and I believe it's my job not to stand here and tell you all the bad news. There is some good news, and we need to concentrate on that. 98% of our problem revolves around cost of production versus the return on product. The return on product has been the same for the last umpteen dozen years, and I think as an industry it's time that we got smarter and in ways of dealing with looking at means to get a better return on our product. The word profitability has disappeared completely from our industry, and that's one of the major drivers of why we find ourselves where we are. So the return through the farm gate, and I know there's a lot of hype about it from Barnaby Joyce's office down, we are yet to see anything in terms of continuity and security in regard to that type of issue. Competition in the marketplace. And, you know, to have an abattoir somewhere based in the north or the northwest would go a long way to alleviate some of the issues. And I know there's a number of those projects on the table, and let's hope like hell that at least one of those projects can be successful in getting something that we can take advantage of. So 10 minutes is not a long time, ladies and gentlemen, but I would certainly like to just touch briefly on a concept that the Gulf Cattlemen's Association is working with a group of guys that come out of Brisbane in regard to dealing with the debt issue. I think the debt issue is the major issue that we face, and somehow or other we've got to find ways and means of putting ourselves in a much stronger position to deal with the banks. So what we've done is brought in these people at looking at putting blocks of debt in the $50 to $100 million range to create the leverage that is required to get the bank's attention in regard to have negotiation platforms to work off. We are dealing with an equity base somewhere in that 50 to 70%. I might add at this point in time, there are people who are still above 70%, but I would suggest that they're probably in a minority. So our project is looking at dealing with people who are still good land livestock managers who have a good understanding of financial management, but because of the adversity from the conditions that have been faced, need a leg up in terms of having that security of ongoing cash flow. There's an opportunity there for those people who sit below 50% in their equity base to have equity injection. So in terms of investors coming in and looking at ways and means that we can help people, and one of my major concerns is maintaining as many people as we can in our industry to maintain the skill sets and the expertise that we need to drive our industry forward out of where we are. So that's about it for me. I haven't heard the dogs bark.
Yeah, they bark twice.
Have
10 minutes is 14. Wrap up, I'd appreciate it.
All right, mate. Okay, well, thanks very much, and I'd just like you to keep those questions in mind that I started with, and look forward to some questions off the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you very much.